After years of serving overseas, Daniel Carter, a decorated soldier, was finally coming home. His heart raced with excitement as his plane touched down on familiar soil. He could already picture the reunion with his wife Emily and their young son Jake. He had dreamt of this moment for so long, coming back to the warmth of his family, the comfort of his own home, and the peace he had longed for during his time in foreign lands. As Daniel drove toward his house, a sense of anticipation filled the air. But when he turned onto his street, something felt off. There was a strange car parked in his driveway. His heart skipped a beat as he slowed to a stop, staring at the unfamiliar vehicle. He shook his head in disbelief, thinking it was a mistake or a neighbor visiting. But as he stepped out of his car and walked up the driveway, his stomach twisted with unease. Through the window, he saw a family inside, a man, a woman, and 2 children. They weren't his family. A sudden chill ran down Daniel's spine. What had happened? Why were strangers in his home? With his heart pounding in his chest, Daniel walked up to the front door, his mind racing. He knocked firmly, expecting someone to open the door and explain the mix-up. But when the door swung open, it wasn't Emily's familiar face that greeted him. Instead, a middle-aged man stood there, smiling as if he had all the answers. "Can I help you?" the man asked, raising an eyebrow. Daniel's voice trembled as he spoke. "This is my house. I live here. Who are you?" The man's smile faded slightly, replaced by a hint of confusion. "Oh, I'm sorry, but we bought this place a few months ago. The sale went through clean. I thought you'd have been notified." Daniel's stomach dropped. Bought the house? He had been overseas, yes, but Emily had promised him they would hold everything together. His thoughts spun wildly. My wife, Emily, and my son, Jake. Where are they? They were supposed to be here. The man shook his head. Sorry, I haven't seen anyone by those names. We've been living here for a while now. Confused and panicked, Daniel took a step back, fumbling for his phone. His fingers shook as he opened his messages to Emily. There were no replies, just a series of unread messages and a sense of emptiness. She had stopped responding completely. Frantic, Daniel rushed to a neighbor's house. Mrs. Foster, an older woman who had always kept an eye on things, opened the door. Mrs. Foster, where's Emily? Where's Jake? She looked at him with a sorrowful expression. Daniel, I thought you knew. Emily sold the house weeks ago and left town. Took Jake with her. No notice, no explanation, just gone. Daniel stood there, frozen, as if the ground had slipped out from under him. His family, his entire life, was gone and he hadn't even known. Still in shock, Daniel could barely wrap his mind around the crushing reality. Emily, the woman he had spent years building a life with, had disappeared without a trace. His heart ached, but his mind refused to let the matter go. He couldn't just stand there, lost and broken. He needed answers. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Daniel went to the local real estate office. His hands trembled as he explained the situation to the receptionist. A few minutes later, the office manager appeared, pulling up the records on her computer. She hesitated before speaking. Mr. Carter, she began. Emily Carter signed all the documents. She legally sold the house while you were deployed, transferring everything into her name. Everything was above board. Daniel's stomach twisted as the words hit him. His wife had handled everything on her own, completely cutting him out. Not only did she sell the house without telling him, but she had also transferred ownership, leaving him with nothing. Stunned, Daniel left the office and checked his bank account. His chest tightened as the balance showed $0. All his savings, every penny he had earned over the years, had vanished. Emily had taken it all. Every last bit. He needed to know why. He needed to understand how she could betray him like this. The answers seemed to be just out of reach. But there was one person he could turn to, his old friend Mike, who had stayed behind when Daniel left for his deployment. When Daniel finally tracked Mike down, his friend looked hesitant, almost guilty. After a long silence, Mike finally spoke. Daniel, I didn't want to tell you this. But Emily, she left you for someone else. A guy named Mark. She's been seeing him for months. I'm sorry, man. The words felt like a punch to Daniel's gut. His mind reeled. Emily had left him, not just emotionally, but physically. She had found someone else, someone who wasn't even a shadow of the man he was. A flood of emotions rushed through him, anger, confusion, betrayal. But instead of crumbling, Daniel's resolve grew stronger. He wasn't going to let her get away with this. His son, Jake, needed him. He needed to find his son, and he would stop at nothing to get justice. No one was going to take his family away from him. With his heart heavy and his mind consumed by thoughts of his son, Daniel found himself with nowhere to stay. The house he had returned to, the home that had once held the promise of a warm reunion, was now nothing more than a stranger's property. There was no place for him here, no sanctuary to ground his shattered world. In a daze, he checked into a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, a place far from the life he had once known. It was far from ideal, but it was all he had for now. Determined to fight for his family, Daniel made calls to lawyers, hoping for some guidance. But the news wasn't good. "It's going to be a long process," they said. "This could take months, even years." The legal battle to reclaim his house, his savings, and even his son would be a drawn-out nightmare. He couldn't afford to wait. Time was against him, and his son was out there, lost to him. Refusing to give up, Daniel dug deeper. He pored over old bank statements, social media accounts, and text messages. Anything that could lead him to Emily and Jake. He searched through everything she had left behind, every clue that might point him toward their new life. As he sifted through the details, he finally found something. A series of transactions, a new address in a neighboring town, and a photo of Emily with Mark, her new boyfriend. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. She had moved on, and she had taken Jake with her. They were living in another town, starting a new life together without a care for the man who had sacrificed so much for them. The pain of betrayal burned deep, but it fueled Daniel's determination. This wasn't just about the house or the money. This was about his son, his flesh and blood, being torn away from him. He would find Jake, and he would make sure Emily knew that she hadn't gotten away with this. Not without a fight. The drive to the new town felt endless, each mile a heavy weight pressing down on Daniel's chest. His hands gripped the steering wheel as his mind raced with what he would say when he saw Emily again. Anger mixed with a deep sense of loss, but above all, he felt an overwhelming need to see his son. He had to know that Jake was okay, that he wasn't just some casualty of Emily's selfish choices. When Daniel finally arrived in the town, he followed the address he had uncovered. He drove down a quiet street, eyes scanning the houses. There it was, Emily's new home. A house he had never seen before, one that felt like a cold reminder of everything he had lost. He parked his car across the street and sat there for a moment, collecting himself. He couldn't let his emotions get the better of him now. His eyes fell on the yard. There, running around with a toy car in his hand, was Jake, his little boy, laughing and playing without a care in the world. Daniel's heart shattered in his chest. He hadn't seen his son in so long, and now, seeing him here, seemingly untouched by the chaos his mother had caused, only deepened the pain. Jake didn't know the truth. He didn't know that his mother had abandoned his father, or that Daniel had been waiting for him to come home. Taking a deep breath, Daniel got out of the car and walked up to the door. He knocked, his heart racing. Moments later, the door swung open, and there she was, Emily. She froze for a moment, her eyes wide with shock, before a mask of defiance quickly replaced her stunned expression. She whispered, voice trembling, "What are you doing here?" Before he could say anything, she tried to slam the door in his face, but Daniel quickly stepped forward, his hands stopping it from closing. "You don't get to do this, Emily," he said, his voice strained with both anger and pain. "You don't get to just take our son and leave without even telling me why. Where's Jake?" Emily hesitated for a moment, then looked over her shoulder, her gaze flickering briefly to their son in the yard. "He's fine," she said coldly. "I'm doing what's best for him." Daniel couldn't believe his ears. "What's best? Taking him away from me? You sold the house, emptied the bank accounts, and you left. No explanation, no goodbye. You left us, Emily. How could you do this?" Emily's expression hardened. "I needed a fresh start, Daniel. You were never here, always away on deployments, always gone. Mark is here for me now. For us. He's been there when you weren't." Before Daniel could respond, Mark appeared in the doorway, looking smug. His arms were crossed over his chest, and there was a condescending smile on his face. "Daniel," he said in a mocking tone, "I see you're still stuck in the past. You've been gone too long to have a say in how things are now. Emily and I are building a life together. It's time for you to move on." Daniel's jaw tightened as the words hit him like a slap. Mark was dismissing him like he was nothing more than a distant memory. He had stolen everything, his wife, his family, his future. "You are not Jake's father," Daniel growled. "You don't get to decide his future. I'm taking him. I'm not walking away from this." But Emily shook her head, her voice firm and cold. You can't take him, Daniel. Mark is a better father figure. He'll give Jake the life you couldn't. The words cut deeper than anything she had ever said before. Daniel wanted to scream, but instead he stood there, his heart breaking all over again. He had lost his family, his home, and now he was losing the battle for his son. But one thing was clear, this wasn't the end. He wouldn't give up. Jake was his, and no one, not even Emily, was going to take that away. As Emily's words echoed in his ears, something shifted inside Daniel. The anger that had been building inside him, the rage at the betrayal, threatened to explode. But instead of losing control, he took a deep breath and pulled out his phone. He didn't need to shout or argue. He needed something far more powerful, evidence. He began recording the conversation without saying a word. Emily's face faltered as she noticed the phone in his hand, but she didn't stop talking. Her defenses were down, and in that moment, she let slip the truth. You sold the house, emptied our savings, left me for someone else, and took Jake away without a word, Daniel said, his voice low and steady as he held the phone out. This isn't a mistake, Emily. You did this on purpose. Emily's eyes narrowed, but there was a flicker of fear in them now. I had to move on, Daniel. I couldn't keep waiting for you to come back. You were never there for us. Mark, he's here now. He's the one who can give Jake the life I couldn't get with you. Daniel didn't react, just letting the words flow into the recording. He had already contacted a lawyer, and through the military legal team, they were exploring charges for fraud and abandonment. The betrayal was clear, and the evidence would not be ignored. If she thought she could get away with this, she was wrong. With the recording safely in his phone, Daniel stood a little straighter, his resolve hardening. He looked Emily in the eye. If you refuse to let me see Jake, there will be serious legal consequences. I have the military and the legal team behind me. You can't hide behind lies and excuses anymore. Emily opened her mouth, but before she could speak, Mark stepped forward, his smug expression faltering. He clearly realized the gravity of the situation. Daniel had the upper hand now. Emily, Mark said, his tone suddenly more serious, almost accusatory. This is a mess. If he's got the military behind him, we're in real trouble. His eyes shifted to Daniel. You really think this will work? Daniel didn't answer, but his silence was enough. The threat of legal action was real, and both Emily and Mark knew it. Mark looked at Emily, the tension between them rising. Emily's face twisted in frustration, and for a moment, Daniel thought she might try to back out. But then she sighed deeply, defeated. Fine, she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. You can take Jake for a visit. Just don't make this harder than it has to be. Daniel nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. This wasn't the victory he had imagined. It wasn't even close, but it was a step in the right direction. Jake was coming home, even if only for a short time, and that was all that mattered right now. As he turned to walk toward the yard, his phone still recording, he caught a glimpse of Jake looking up at him, his wide eyes full of confusion. Daniel's heart swelled with love and regret, but there was no turning back. This fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. The days following Daniel's confrontation with Emily were filled with a flurry of legal meetings, tense conversations, and sleepless nights. But as the case unfolded, the truth came to light. Fraud and abandonment had been committed, and Emily's lies couldn't stand up in court. Daniel's lawyers built a strong case, uncovering evidence that Emily had intentionally cut him out of his own life, deceiving him while he was overseas. It wasn't long before the town, which had once whispered about Emily's new life, began to turn against her. The people who had once admired her strength now saw her for what she truly was, someone who had abandoned her family for selfish reasons. Word spread quickly, and soon the whispers were replaced with open judgment. In court, Emily fought fiercely, but the evidence against her was undeniable. The judge granted Daniel temporary custody of Jake, ruling that Emily had neglected her responsibilities as a mother. Emily, devastated by the loss of her son and the fallout from her actions, found herself facing a future much darker than she had ever imagined. Mark, who had stood by her through it all, suddenly disappeared from the picture. With the scandal surrounding Emily's betrayal, he had no interest in being part of the mess. He left her, unwilling to be involved in the fallout. Emily was left alone, isolated, with no one to blame but herself. For Daniel, though, the battle wasn't over. As he held his son in his arms for the first time in what felt like forever, he knew the road ahead would still be difficult. But as he looked into Jake's eyes, he realized something. He had lost everything, the house, the life he had planned, but he had gained what mattered most. He had his son back. The town, which had once seen him as a broken soldier, now looked at him differently. He wasn't a man who had been abandoned. He was a father who fought for his child. And as he walked with Jake by his side, starting over with nothing but the love they shared, Daniel knew he was finally on the right path, toward healing, redemption, and a new beginning. After the court battles and the whirlwind of legal paperwork, Daniel and Jake finally found a new place to call home. It wasn't much, smaller, quieter, and humble, but it was theirs. Every inch of the modest house was filled with love and the kind of hope that only a new beginning could bring. Daniel poured his heart into making it a place where Jake would feel safe and cared for. At first, Jake had been confused and uncertain, his little world shaken by the changes. But as the days passed, he began to settle, to understand that his father was there for him in ways that were deeper than words could explain. Daniel did his best to reassure him, to show him that nothing would ever tear them apart again. One evening, after a quiet dinner and an evening of laughter, Daniel tucked Jake into bed. He kissed his son's forehead, smoothing his hair as he whispered goodnight. But just as he turned to leave, Jake's small voice broke the silence. "Dad, I missed you," Jake whispered, his voice filled with sincerity and innocence. Tears welled up in Daniel's eyes as he stood there, overcome with emotion. The pain of the past, the battles, the loss, all melted away in that one moment. This was home. His son was finally where he belonged, safe and loved. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel allowed himself to believe that no matter what the future held, they had each other. The story ended not with bitterness, but with a sense of justice, resilience, and an overwhelming hope for the future. Thank you so much for watching this powerful story of a father's love, resilience, and the fight for justice. Daniel's journey reminds us that no matter how broken life may seem, there's always hope for a new beginning, especially when we stand up for those we love. If you were moved by this story, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on more emotional and inspiring content like this video. If you believe in the power of love and family, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment below and share your own experiences or thoughts on the story. And if you think others could use a little inspiration, share this with your friends and family. Thank you again for being a part of this journey, and we'll see you in the next story.